orchestra, Leslie, etc. Leslie? Okay.
All right, it's recorded.
We've got to really work on this, and in quick fashion. Okay. Can we drag the bass drum out of there?
What is music? It's everything. It's not just something you hear. It's something you feel. It's something that you respond to. I mean, music is an art form that can go anywhere.
Having a symphony is a point of pride for a community. And I have been absolutely surprised and delighted over the years that we've had the symphony of the response that it invokes in our citizens.
Having a symphony orchestra is a real badge of honor. And I often hear, you mean there's an orchestra in Rancho Cordova? And I am really proud to be able to say yes, and that Symphony de Oro does some of the best and most innovative and interesting programming that they will ever find.
You know, a symphony orchestra is an amazing thing. It's actually a miracle, in my opinion, a musical miracle. Theoretically, nothing should ever sound good, and I'm talking about any symphony orchestra anywhere. The instruments that we play are all ancient instruments. I mean, the violins, violas, cellos, the bass, all of those instruments have been created for hundreds of years now, and they're built the same way today. They're played the same way. And so we're using old techniques to try and come up with a really great group sound. And so all that warming up puts you in a place where when the conductor comes out, picks up the baton, and gives you your downbeat, you get a beautiful sound. Well, it's been about 10 years. This is actually the end of the 10th season for the symphony. So we started about a little over 10 years ago because we've had about 10 complete seasons with the symphony.
A group of us came together to found Symphony de Oro at that time with a little bit of a different focus than the kind of more traditional orchestras that already exist here.
It was started by the musicians who attended the chamber music workshop that Pete Nowlin runs.
So Symphony de Oro came into existence specifically to be able to do some innovative things in programming and in personnel. We live by a very, very friendly way of operating. Just a little less volume. Here, and we'll go right at, because this is really, really, really. Bum, bum, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 2, 3. Da, 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 da. Okay, hold it right out to 4. Right out to 4. I swear it will be easier. Da, 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 da. We're crescendoing. Da, da, da. Okay, good. So I'm just worried because it went da 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 da. So when we got to the long note, we lost the crescendo that is peaking a bar later, right? That's what I've been saying. Like the slurring is not, okay. Orchestra.
You know, when you go to a workshop, it's kind of an emotional experience. You learn so much in a very compressed amount of time. You meet great people who are having similar experiences to you, and you get close. And you don't want to wait until next summer to get to play together and do this sort of thing again. And so there were a number of musicians at the workshop who thought it would be terrific if we could keep playing together. Maybe we could form an orchestra. And so we invited Pete Nowlin to be the conductor, and happily he agreed to do that. And we haven't looked back.
The symphony sort of grew from a beautiful blossoming of the arts in Rancho Cordova, which actually started with a bunch of local residents who went to the city and said, we want an arts commission. The orchestra was formed just about the time Rancho Cordova was celebrating its 10th birthday. And because the arts had taken a nice hold, we really wanted to feature for the 10th anniversary of the city how the arts were flourishing. From that, we decided to throw an art show and call it Genesis, a very fitting topic for that. But once we started down this pathway, we have always wanted to pursue people's passions. If you can get people's kind of connect with what their passion is, everything becomes possible.
Symphony d'Oro came into existence from a group of chamber music players. That first group that founded it were chamber musicians who attended a workshop that I run every summer at Sac State. And so there's a big focus also on chamber music in our orchestra. We have chamber groups that play for many civic functions and events in Rancho Cordova throughout the year.
Orchestra members are from the surrounding communities and the community of Rancho Cordova. We actually do have some folks who are from the city of Rancho Cordova, but the entire region. Many of them play in other ensembles, both small and large. They're all volunteers, which is a wonderful thing. Right now, our membership is at about 50 people, depending on what type of concert that we are putting on.
So in the fall of 21, we were just coming out of COVID. I had recently moved to the Sacramento area also, and I was missing being in a musical ensemble. And I saw Symphony d'Oro was an available musical ensemble that did auditions that were a little bit more casual than some other orchestras. And so I was very lucky to find that group and be able to join.
I grew up in the Sacramento area, but I did my undergraduate studies down in San Diego. So I was looking for somewhere to play when I moved back home, and I found Symphony d'Oro just online.
So I got involved. I played at a music workshop called CalCap that a lot of people in the group play in. And Lorraine and Louise encouraged me to join the group, so I did. It was really hard at first. I was horrible. I had never played in a serious orchestra or had a serious teacher. So I was, I couldn't play in tune. I was lost all the time. And then after about a year, I got to where I could play bad sounding notes at the right time. But Lorraine was always encouraging, super supportive, so I kept at it, and now I can play better sounding notes at the right time.
I got involved in the symphony because Kathy was involved, and for the first few years that she was in the group, I would come to the concerts. I thought for a long time that playing that kind of music was out of my range because I was very much a beginner at the time. And I still am in a way, and it's really been great. It's just been a fantastic learning experience for me, and I feel like I've really grown as a musician.
I started playing the viola when I was 8 years old. I had started playing violin. I grew faster than other kids in the class. They needed violas. It's a little bit bigger, so they asked me if I would play, and of course I did. And I've played since I was 8. You can guess that that's about 21 years ago, plus or minus. But I have lived in many different areas of the United States and even in Ireland. And everywhere I've lived, I've joined a community orchestra to be part of that musical group.
So similar to Annette, I also started, I think when I was 9 years old. It was 4th grade in the elementary schools, and they said, okay, here are your options. You can play recorder and sing. And I said, nope, absolutely not. So they said, okay, then your other options are violin, viola, or cello. And I said, I don't know what a viola is. I want that one. And so they gave me my viola, and I fell in love with it, and I've been playing it ever since. I did study music in college. I was a music education major. So I've been in orchestras ever since I picked up the viola back when I was 9 years old.
Like most of us, I started playing music when I was a youngster. I didn't start out on the violin. I started out playing the piano. I was very lucky. My parents wanted me to learn to play a musical instrument, and so they arranged for me to have piano lessons. And I believe I was around 8 or 9 years old when I started doing that. By the time I got to high school, I wanted to try something different, and I had been given the opportunity by the music teacher in the high school I attended to become part of a string project where students learn to play stringed instruments, and so the group could have a symphony orchestra, which we did. And I agreed to do that as long as I could play the violin. Have no earthly clue why I decided I wanted to play the violin, but it did become a bone of contention when the instructor tried to hand me a viola. And I said, no, I don't want to play that instrument. I want to play the violin. So I was attracted to the violin, not quite sure why, really just attracted to the sounds, the feel of it, and really wanted to learn that particular instrument. So I did. And I played the violin then throughout school. And then also for the first couple years that I was in college at UCLA in the symphony there. And then because my studies took me to becoming a lawyer, I stopped playing the violin. The two, each of those takes up a lot of time, so I wasn't really able to devote the time to music that it takes to stay proficient at a stringed instrument. I came back to the violin about 30-some years later when I met Pete Nowlin, actually.
I started playing in school when I was in the 3rd grade. In school, I got to choose an instrument, and I was pretty good for a while, and then didn't really keep up the practicing and didn't get very good. So I stopped playing at about age 15 and started again when my kids started playing with their school.
My musical background is that I am basically an adult beginner. My parents were both professional musicians, and I grew up around music all the time, and both my siblings are accomplished musicians, and I never really engaged the same way that the rest of my family did. Really first started getting involved when the kids did, because when they got into middle school, they had to start playing stringed instruments. My parents were in retirement, and they started playing with the kids. They started playing with Kathy, and it became a family thing. I really wanted to take part in that. So it was about 10 years ago. I was 45 years old, and I started pretty much from the beginning, just so that I could play with family and with the symphony.
So Symphony d'Oro is a community orchestra, and I think it really does bring community to an orchestral setting.
The symphony's mission at its heart is to bring high-quality symphonic performances to Rancho Cordova and its citizens. That's really what we do. In doing that, we accomplish a lot of other things. First of all, we bring live music. Music is something to be shared. And while it's terrific that we have all these different tools now with our tablets and our phones, I mean, I can go right to my phone now and listen to a concert. It's not the same as experiencing it with someone that I'm seated next to who's responding to it, seeing the musicians live performing, enjoying what they're doing, and sharing what they're doing with us.
But I think a really important part of Symphony d'Oro for me is that we provide free concerts for the community. I've played in orchestras everywhere that I've ever lived, and I've never had that experience before where they offer free music. And that's such an important thing to be able to keep music going in the community. Symphony Doro has so many really unique types of music that we present and try to make it accessible for the community. But I think one of the most fun that I've had was playing the musical score that was written by Andrew Simpson for Buster Keaton's One Week. It's an amazing experience to play to a movie because the timing has to be perfect.
And it was cool too because like the way that they score those silent films, it's very much tied to the action. So if somebody if the house gets hit by a train, for example, we were playing the train noises and then we were the big explosion of the house getting hit.
The symphony has a large repertoire. We play lots of different styles of music. I think when most people think of an orchestra, they think of what we would all call classical music, which is Mozart. And we do play Mozart. But we also play music that's even older than Mozart. We've played Baroque music. We have played classical music by Mozart and Haydn. And then we move forward with music by Beethoven and romantic music by Dvorak, Mendelssohn. But we also play pieces that you will hear in opera, pieces that you hear in musicals, rock and roll, jazz, modern pieces, and then the compositions that we also commission. So good music is good music. It doesn't matter who composes it, how old they are, whether they're living or not. It talks to people. And the musical heritage that exists in the world is everybody's heritage. It doesn't matter where you live, what country you live in. There aren't any borders. That's the miracle of music, is it speaks to everybody, and it speaks to everybody in not only a universal way, but in our each individual ways.
We practice with the symphony once a week during the season. And then, of course, there's a lot of practicing that goes on outside that. And when in the run-up to concerts, there's quite a few rehearsals and a lot of practicing.
Him joining the symphony was just kind of a natural evolution because we were already going to weekly rehearsals, and it was just the simplest thing for him to join us.
I've been playing the cello for about 12 years, and with the Symphony Doro, I've been playing for about 3. My elementary school has us, they have us all start at 4th grade. They have us all pick a stringed instrument, so you can choose between cello, violin, or viola. And so my brother chose cello 4 years before me, and that's kind of what inspired me, I suppose, to start on the cello. So my favorite instrument is the cello, although I do sort of, I can appreciate the violin as well and the viola. So I'd say it's a little bit unusual for someone of my age to sort of be able to share something like that with being with my parents in an orchestra. But I think it's been a very good bonding sort of experience for me. So yeah, it's something that I think over the years I've really come to like, the sort of adrenaline you get from before the concert. So this is the cello that I play. It is not the lowest instrument in the orchestra, but its lowest note is a low C. So it's a full octave below the viola, which is then a 5th below the violin. And then the bass, which is sometimes not included in an orchestra, that is lower still than a cello. Yeah, so the low C, and then the G, D, and then A. Yeah, so a week before the concert, it can be a little bit stressful since there's usually a lot of practicing that I've procrastinated over the last few weeks before then. Since I've been sort of promoted in the Symphony d'Oro to principal, for the rest of the cellos in my section, I sort of have to tell them like what bowings to use. So, if there's a certain part that needs, say 2 down bows in a row or a bunch of different technique that isn't already written in the music, then it's my responsibility to sort of help clear that up. So that's one thing I often do before the concert.
The symphony is unique in that it's operated by its musicians. It is a corporation. It's a 501c3 corporation, tax-exempt corporation, but its board of directors is composed of its musicians. That's unusual.
As well as being a musician, I'm on the board of directors for the Symphony d'Oro, and my responsibilities focus a lot on the grants that we request and then have to manage. Being a community orchestra, there are some donations that come in, which is very much appreciated, but we really rely on the city of Rancho Cordova and their council to provide us with the grant funding to be able to do these concerts for free for the public, and that's a really important part.
So in addition to being a member of the orchestra and playing viola, I'm also the orchestra librarian, and what that means is I'm the person who collects the sheet music. Pete, our conductor, sends the list to me and the board and says, this is what we're playing for our next concert. I collect all of that sheet music and I distribute that to all of the members of the orchestra. I send emails with the PDFs, making sure that they can access everything that they need before we start rehearsing the music.
I have 3 roles that I serve with the Symphony d'Oro. The first is I'm a violinist. I play in the first violin section. The second role is I am also the concertmaster, so I work in that capacity in the violin section and in the strings in general. I'm also the president of the organization, which is the Symphony d'Oro Rancho Cordova.
As a lot of founder-type people, when you're starting an enterprise, they get things going and then they're not actually the people who are going to run the organization. But in Lorraine, that was not true.
The role of the concertmaster it's actually a traditional role that exists in most symphony orchestras. You are a liaison between the conductor and the musicians. The concertmaster is always the first violinist in the orchestra. And one of the things that we do when you play a string instrument, you will notice that we're actually playing an old instrument and we're making the sound with basically a stick, like this pencil, that has horsehair attached to it. That's our voice. We don't breathe like wind players do in the same way to make sound. That's actually our voice. And it takes quite a bit of work and planning to make the sorts of sounds that you want. So the concertmaster typically spends a lot of time figuring out how we're going to use our bows, whether we're going up or down, how many notes will be on a bow, how much weight we'll be using, all kinds of different things. And so that's a big part of what the concertmaster does before we actually even begin rehearsals. We adjust those things in rehearsals. And you'll notice the acknowledgement between the conductor and the concertmaster, typically either or both. At the beginning of a concert and the end of a concert, you will see the conductor shaking the hands of the concertmaster and occasionally other string section leaders. So typically you'll see a concertmaster enter after the house lights dim and the concert is getting ready to begin. It's a bit of a ritual. The concertmaster will come out, bow to the audience. That's our acknowledgement of the audience being there. It's really thanking them for being there. And then commence with the tuning of the orchestra, where we all tune to the oboe.
The role of the conductor with the symphony orchestra can be a bit of a mystery. We do have greater responsibility than just to start it or just to keep everybody together. Those are two of the things you hear a lot. Generally, the hope is that every motion that we make in some way expresses something about what we wish to happen in the music. So we can conduct in ways that are staccato and biting, or in ways that are fluid and legato. And in that way, we are trying to inspire the players to do those things. Tom, 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 tom. Tom, 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 tom. Tom, 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 tom. Okay, here we are. 475. 475. It's all the brass and woodwind's last note before you have a little rest. I confused you a little bit, but this was brilliant, so we're going to do it this way, okay? I'll actually cut off and bring them in, but wait till you hear them play. Okay, here we go. One more time. That was fantastic. And as we conduct, we use a standard set of beat patterns that match the written meter of the music, and this does help the players to always know where they are, but that's really just kind of the baseline responsibility. I also think one of the most important responsibilities of the conductor is to balance the levels of sound in the group so that the melody can be clearly heard and so that things are coming out in the right way and chords are balanced correctly to sound right. Balance is one of the really big responsibilities of the conductor.
Yeah, when it comes to Pete, one thing I really admire about him is how sort of calm and collected he always is. He never really gives off a sort of nervous energy that would, make you nervous as a musician. He always just makes you feel very confident in, say a concert that's quickly approaching, or he's just very encouraging, and he's always very positive, and I feel like he really just keeps everything together in a way that I admire. So
he's really fantastic to work with. He's just a very kind person, and he loves music, and he loves making music with other people, and he loves sharing music with other people. I think that's something that really drew me to the orchestra. Was I came into the very first day, and I met Pete and Lorraine, our concertmaster. They said, "Sure, welcome. Take a seat in the viola section and see what you think."
And I met him when I first got my violin out after a 30-plus year hiatus. And I remember not having a qualm about going to this workshop. I thought, oh, how fun. And I realized that I was woefully unprepared to be there. But I met this wonderful, encouraging, positive person as Pete Nowlin. And it's been a wonderful friendship ever since. He's a very creative force, and he's kind and motivating, and he works well with amateur musicians and has a way of getting the best from them. And he's a natural fit for Rancho Cordova. He's an engaging speaker, a pretty shrewd businessman as well, and I can't say enough wonderful things about him.
Any symphony orchestra is made up of instruments from 4 families. There are the string instruments, which generally sit at the front and include the violins, violas, cellos, and basses. Then there's the woodwinds, who generally sit kind of in the middle of the back, and they include flutes, oboes, clarinets, and bassoons. And the brass sit usually to one side or in the very back, the trumpets, trombones, horns, French horns they're sometimes called, and tubas, and the percussion or drums and other sorts of percussive instruments. So each of the groups of instruments within the orchestra has a certain role, and it can change from time to time, but let's go through them. The string instruments generally are kind of the foundation of the orchestra. Most often, the first violins, the top string section, is going to have the melody. The most often. Not always, and not exclusively by any means, not even 50% of the time. But out of the orchestra, if you were just going to put down money in the pool, you'd want to say, yeah, the first violin probably has the melody. So the string instruments provide that foundation for a few reasons. One is they can play for a long time without needing to breathe, and that gives them a certain quality. And also composers just have a certain sound. The string instruments are also the section of the orchestra that hasn't changed in a long time. We still play violins from 400 years ago. The woodwind instruments tend to provide beautiful solos. Each of them has a role too. If you're going to portray a bird, it's going to be the flute. But they tend to play beautiful solos and tutis and kind of layer on top of that. And then the brass are the group that comes in and brings the power most of the time. The brass instrument actually has the capacity to be the loudest section of the orchestra or the softest. Brass just have the widest dynamic range. And then percussion, I think we can all kind of picture. They provide accents.
One of the byproducts of our mission in bringing music, live music, to the citizens of Rancho Cordova is that we recruit young local talent in the form of composers to craft pieces that can be performed by the ensemble. Carlos McMillan Fuentes is one of the composers that we have commissioned a musical work from. I first met Carlos actually at City Hall in Rancho Cordova. He was performing with a mutual friend, a clarinetist, and they were making a great sound as an ensemble. And I thought to myself, I need to get to know this young man. He has a future with the symphony. And I said to Pete Nowlin, we need to get to know this pianist that I saw at City Hall. His name is Carlos McMillan Fuentes. He will be terrific with the symphony.
I've been with the symphony for many years, since before the pandemic. I joined as a keyboardist for the premiere of one piece by a composer, a local composer, and after that, continued to be invited back for additional pieces until they just decided to keep me around. And during the pandemic, the suggestion was made by Lorraine and the maestro to premiere a piece that I'd previously written for solo piano, and to create a new version of it for orchestra and piano. And that was really the beginning of my residency as the composer in residence. So composers can choose whatever medium they like to work with. There's composers who work, electronically in music production software. There's composers who write for choir, for all sorts of ensembles, but I've always been drawn to the orchestra. I love writing for orchestra. I've always been interested in it as a medium of expression because there's so many different musicians and there's so many different colors, so many instrumental colors. I have always written pieces for orchestra as long as I can remember, but it's much more difficult to get a piece for orchestra performed because especially as an unknown composer, having somebody sort of take a chance on your music to premiere and nobody's ever heard it, nobody knows if it's even playable, is a real gamble.
There have been 3 major works that we've commissioned in the last 10 years, and Carlos is one of them. His composition is called City Portraits. It is a tribute to the city of Rancho Cordova.
Some of the most exciting programming we've been able to do at Symphony de Oro has been to premiere a couple of works by composer Carlos Macmillan Fuentes, who is our pianist and composer in residence.
It was performed by the symphony at the opening ceremonies of the city's 20th anniversary. It was so well received that we persuaded Carlos to add to the composition about other places and things that he had observed in the city of Rancho Cordova. And then we performed the entire suite called City Portraits the following fall.
Carlos really takes a brief and finds beautiful angles on it. So the first movement of City Portraits, the woman at Mill Station, is really bringing up a central building in Rancho Cordova. Mill Station was its transit hub, its train station historically, and is now its arts center, and is just to focus on that, for him to think to focus on that, was so inspired.
Seeing a creator of music sort of take on a project and from start to finish create a musical story that matches a narrative of our city.
It was inspired by, of course, Mill Station, the historical Mill Station, which has now become the MAC, this incredible performing arts venue with these rotating art galleries that are just incredible stuff. And it's right here in the middle of Rancho Cordova. It's an incredible institute. So my perspective when I was creating The Woman at Mill Station was to think about what it might be like in the early days of Rancho Cordova to be a traveler who's arriving to Mill Station for the very first time and arriving to the city of Rancho Cordova for the very first time. So there's a lot of different sort of moods and tapestries that happen through the orchestra, which is sort of like if you're traveling, through on a coach or a train or something, and you are seeing these different things go by, and you get off, and there's all these people around, and different conversations and different things happening. So it's meant to feel sort of busy and sort of ever-changing.
We got to the suite because the reception for The Woman at Mill Station had been so significant at the anniversary performance. And so I said, why don't we just ask Carlos to expand this and turn it into a suite? It's also something that could be further expanded as time goes on. You can always add movements to it. So that's the nice thing about music, right? It doesn't really have a shelf life. You can always enhance it, add to it, play it again, and it's fresh and new. And so that's kind of how we look at that project. It's not over yet.
The second movement, Pioneers of Air and Space, salutes Rancho Cordova's history as a military, an Air Force town with Mather Air Force Base.
So I composed the second and the third pieces at the same time. And the one that was completed first is Pioneers of Air and Space, which became the second movement of the suite, the middle movement of the piece. And for this one, I was really inspired by the history of Rancho Cordova and its surrounding areas in relation to Mather Air Force Base and also Aerojet, and the development of all of this technology that really got humankind from the ground to air and then eventually to outer space as well. It is really a tribute to the people who served in the military, the people who were the scientists and engineers who were really instrumental in developing a lot of that technology and really transforming and modernizing in some ways this area.
The final movement, Toccata Coreana, was such a hoot because each year we play at least one concert at Coreana Plaza. Symphony d'Oro rocks the food court at Coreana Plaza. And Carlos launched from that and wrote a fantastic piece that we then later performed in Coreana Plaza. And it includes the hustle and bustle and the shopping carts going by. So we were portraying Coreana Plaza in Coreana Plaza. It was just a brilliant, brilliant and fun thing, and some of the really innovative stuff that we get to do here at Symphony d'Oro.
Toccata Coreana was, again, composed at the same time as the second one, but it was the final one finished. And part of it is that you always want to end with a bang, right? You want to end with something that's sort of a high note. And the first time that I went to KP International Market, I was just blown away, first off, by its sheer size. You know, there's this food court, there's all of these incredible ingredients from all over the world. You can get specific things that you're looking for. And there's so much activity. There's so many different types of people coming in and coming out, people from all different backgrounds and cultures. And it was Lorraine, we were having a conversation and she said, wouldn't it be interesting to write a piece of music about KP Market? And at the time I thought it was funny because I'm like trying to imagine how that would even work. Like how to write a piece about a supermarket. That process really begins with a conversation with the conductor and with Lorraine and just getting an idea of what the orchestra can, like what the occasion is, right? What is it that I'm composing the piece for? How long is the piece, right? How much music does it need to be? Because left to your own devices, a composer can take a commission and create a piece that's 4 hours long, and you know, just what are you gonna do? You commissioned them. So now you're gonna play this 4 hour long piece.
The collaboration between a conductor and a composer in coming to a premiere performance can take a lot of different shapes. Sometimes you just get what the composer wrote and it's your job to perform it. Other times you get what the composer wrote and maybe you work together on creating the performance. But when I get to work with Carlos, it's really, he's such a great collaborator that I don't throw ideas for specific music to him. That would be presumptuous on my part. But I sometimes can suggest things. Carlos comes, you know, since he's a member of our orchestra and at our rehearsals, he writes for our orchestra specifically, meaning he knows the player who's going to be playing the part. So it's really a deep collaboration with Carlos that you don't often get in this situation.
I think when I first heard that we were going to play one of Carlos's pieces and that he wrote it specifically for us to be playing for Rancho Cordova's birthday, I was super excited because I think I love being part of new art and it's such a great experience to not only get to meet the composer of the music that you're playing, but also to play with the composer. And Carlos was playing with us on piano, but I was really excited also because I just love his musical style, and he's very, I don't even know how to put it into words, you know, like he knows what he wants to say, and he's so clever about the ways that he says it, and it all sounds so great to listen to, and it's fun to play. Because sometimes, you know, you get music and it's not as much fun to play, or it's really great to play, but nobody wants to listen to what you're doing.
When I'm composing for a commission, for a specific occasion, I try to get as much information as possible, as much feedback as possible before I start writing. The reason being that there's too many possibilities, there's too many things that I could write, and it may or may not. Ultimately, aesthetics are going to be aesthetics. People are going to like what they like, and that's fine. I'm not necessarily creating a piece of music that everyone's going to like aesthetically.
But his music, I think, is really accessible to everybody, and that was something that I enjoyed, and I could also invite, family and friends to come to our concerts, and they were able to enjoy it too.
But I try to get all the inspiration before I start writing so that when I'm writing, I can kind of get out the way and let the ideas just happen. When I'm composing a piece of music, whether it's commissioned or not, once I've gotten that sense of the theme and the structure of the piece and how I want to do it, there comes a point in the compositional process where the music sort of has a mind of its own. So long I've heard this music in my head. I've heard it in my head, I've heard it at the keyboard, I've heard it in Finale, which is the program I use to compose music. The little synthesized digital versions of these instruments playing this music with no expression, of course. It's a robot, it's very, very cold and just perfectly in time. And so hearing all of this stuff, and I'm the only person who's heard it for so long, and suddenly I'm in this room with 60 other people, and now everyone's hearing it and experiencing it for the first time. It's very much like a dream. It feels very surreal. Like, is this, like, what? Like, you're playing this thing that I've been thinking about all this time? And that magic never gets old, honestly. I've never had a first run through of a composition of mine that hasn't felt very surreal and just very bizarre and very out of body, But it's a really special experience because to have someone else who is playing your music with love and intention and just trying to do their best to do exactly what you want or what they think you want is just really, really humbling and really, really empowering at the same time, because it really reminds me just how music is this thing that's just above and bigger than all of us. It's an incredible experience to make it together and for us to rally around one of my ideas as the thing that we're creating is pure magic. It's always frightening when you're playing a piece of music for the first time. That moment of live performance where nobody's ever heard this and you want to do a good job and then the composer's right there in the middle of everything. There's always a sense of nerves and anxiousness, which you wouldn't necessarily know it from listening to the performance. But it was a huge relief to have it done. Once we get through that, as much as I enjoyed the experience itself, once it's done, it really does feel like, wow, we've really done something incredible. That's a great feeling. So to have the second performance was an incredible experience as well, because you worked so hard for something, you've achieved that thing, and then you think, well, it'd just be a shame to only do this thing once. So how beautiful is it that we had a second opportunity to perform the piece? And how much more beautiful that it was performed in the space that was the source of inspiration for one of the movements of the piece.
Part of the two-part series of concerts that we did with Carlos's pieces, we got to play really in the community of Rancho Cordova at Coriana Plaza, the KP Market. And we really did just park in the parking lot, and we showed up with our instruments, and there was a company that brought us chairs. So I remember we were sitting there and we had to pull out chairs, and I think we were using grocery carts to push the chairs into the building. So we didn't have to carry like 20 chairs at a time. So we got there a couple hours early, and we were just setting up the chairs, and we brought our own stands, I think, that day. Yeah. So every musician brought their own music stand with them. The whole while, people are coming in and out with their food, and, we're trying to go in with our chairs, and they're trying to leave with their groceries. And it was definitely a fun experience. I've never done anything like that.
In an orchestral setting, it's pretty easy to keep the focus on the conductor because the audience is in a very dark environment and you can't see them that well. KP was really different. There were people walking around. There was one guy that came right behind Pete and was taking pictures of us. That was a little bit distracting. But then the music pulls you in. So, you see that in the background a little bit, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, and part of rehearsal is you're trying to get so familiar with it that in that kind of situation, you're like, okay, I know how this part goes.
Right.
Even though there's somebody spilling their boba tea over there, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna keep going.
That, to me, was the most surreal thing of all, was the fact that we're performing this piece called Toccata Coreana inside of Coreana Plaza, inside of KP Market.
I don't think anybody's ever done a piece, performed a piece, or premiered a piece about a place at the place in a supermarket.
Which is not something that I had envisioned when I composed the piece. I didn't even think about it being performed at KP Market.
Isn't that how music kind of started? Musicians would show up in the marketplace and just play for the shekels people would toss at them. And with all credit due to the symphony, they said, let's give it a go. And now the symphony concerts at KP International Market occur a couple times a year and are a hallmark of living in Rancho Cordova, that you can go to a grocery store and hear a symphony.
So it was a really incredible experience from that perspective to bring the music to the community, to have a whole different audience of people there, including people just sort of randomly walking in to buy groceries. They were able to experience that.
I love the new composition by Carlos, was really, really special. So many interesting things going on. And what a just lovely tribute to this place.
Thank you. And so third and final piece of the set is called Toccata Coreana. And this piece was inspired by this place and is meant to be a sort of musical portrait of KP Market, right? So a toccata is a piece of music that's often really characterized by its rhythmic intensity, and I think we've all been shopping before when we are on a mission and we have things to do, but it's always a wonderful experience to be here, to be a part of the incredible food, and to be able to get literally anything I could look for or imagine or need over in the market next door.
It's so different and so neat. It's so nice to see all these different people just walking by and observing it. And who knows, maybe it's the first time they've ever seen an orchestra. Who knows? And if so, great.
Of course, the second performance tends to be a little bit more relaxed than the first one because we've already done it once. We all kind of know what to expect. The sound, of course, is very different.
It has been fantastic today. It's been fantastic when it began. It began when we were 10 years old as a city, and it was the Rancho Cordova Civic Light Orchestra, and now it's the Symphony de Oro Rancho Cordova, but we support them so much, and the music is unbelievable. Anybody who hasn't been to hear them, they have to come and they have to listen to them. It's been great. It's great today, and it's been great before. So come on down.
Symphony de Oro has been building for 10 years, and we are really excited about the next 10 years.
Over the years, the symphony has enjoyed the support of every city manager of the city of Rancho Cordova, because they also, I think, understand probably more deeply than me and other people the importance of having layers in your community, right? So from the very start, starting with Ted Gabler and through Cyrus Abhar and now Micah Runner, these people, they get it, and they have been huge supporters of the symphony.
The importance of a symphony really is about creating, I think, some city love. You have a lot of creative individuals in your community, in your city, and really finding their passions and creating opportunities for people to use their passions locally is really about what makes a city great. And so I think having that opportunity and creating that opportunity and having a symphony in Rancho Cordova really brings forward additional community love for a city and for a place that you belong and you live. The city of Rancho Cordova contributes to the symphony on a regular basis, and so it really is a part of an endowment, a foundation that we want to support the arts, and the symphony is an important part of that. And really, through different special events to support them, both financially and bringing more people into the community and more people to see them perform and the great performances that they deliver.
We're all at the top of our game in these other fields, but the music has drawn us back together, right? And most of that is because we all started, I suspect, although I'm not 100% sure, that everybody you talked to said something about starting out as a youngster playing music.
First of all, they can come to a free concert. They can bring their grandchildren, and they do. And they can have a dignified and uplifting musical experience. But the one thing that they really love is it's ours. It is our own symphony. And as you're creating, a city and you're growing a culture of a city, isn't that just a wonderful ingredient to have? That something so beautiful and non-controversial and something everybody can enjoy, because it doesn't matter if you're young or you're old, if you understand English or you don't, everybody understands music.
I watched about music.
And what did you think about it?
I liked it.
Yeah. What did you like about it?
It was very good.
Yeah. What instrument do you like best?
Yeah, the cello.
What do you like about the cello?
It's because my grandma's friend plays it.
Well, I come from, probably 60 miles away, just basically to see the symphony. So that's one of the things. I like the music. I like what they, what they play.
We're here today just because we have a fascination with orchestra and we thought this would be a good family outing.
I enjoy it primarily because the conductor does an effort to bring something interesting and exciting. It's not always the same.
Yes, I have been doing piano ever since I was around 7, and then I've been doing ukulele starting this year.
You ever want to play the symphony maybe one day?
I want to play viola or a harp.
One of the other things that we accomplish in performing live music and our outreach programs is perpetuating our art form. And if we don't do this, it can die. And that would be a crying shame for everybody. That's a function that most musical groups will do, and one that we take seriously. And it starts with youngsters. We've actually been approached by some folks who would like to set up an endowment and that we could administer and hopefully encourage and support youngsters who wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to learn music. There seem to be fewer school programs than there were when I was young that teach music as part of the curriculum in the schools, which I think is a shame and a loss. I think it's been proven that music helps youngsters to learn in general, that the discipline and the learning of an instrument serves many purposes. It's not just for enjoyment. It also leads to great social interaction, but also the discipline to learn other types of topics that might be what somebody does for a living. So I think it's critical to have live music, symphonic music, because it encompasses every instrument you can think of, potentially, so that it's available. Our concerts are available to families. Most of them are free. Pretty much every concert we do is free. We have one fundraiser concert a year, but they're free to the public. We want youngsters to come. We want them to come up and look at our instruments, touch them, get excited about them. You know, if I could leave a concert with a couple of youngsters going, wow, I'd really like to try to play that flute, or I really want to play the violin like that, that would be great, then we've done our job. That's the job. And that's really that's why a musician practices, right? That's what the musicians do. If I had a message for them, it would be, thank you. Thank you so much for all the time that you volunteer in rehearsal, in concerts, in administration, of our organization. Thank you for sharing your expertise as a musician with our audience and with each other, and your camaraderie. And thank you for what I know are just hours and hours of practice, because that doesn't happen by accident. You have to really want it. You have to really want to make a particular sound. If you've ever heard an orchestra tuning up, you hear that cacophony of sound that happens before a concert, before the tuning happens. That's what it would sound like basically all the time, without the heart of the musician and the discipline of the musician to make it better. So when we pick up a piece that feels important to us, like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, it's with a determination to do it the very best way that we can, and sing it our way, because no two recordings of any song are the same, but to make it our own, but also be respectful of what was intended when it was composed. To the extent a youngster's excited by that when they come to the concert, that's it for me. Doesn't get better than that.